you're planting bare-rooted trees, it's absolutely essential to keep these roots out of the wind, out of the sun, to prevent them drying out. So if you can't plant them straight away, then just cover them up with soil like that and they'll be fine until you can. It's a good time of the year to be planting now. Did you know that between 35% and 50% of container-grown trees like this one, which are planted in the spring, will die in their first year? In the drought year of 1976, that figure rose to 90%, which rather indicates that there's nothing wrong with a container-grown tree. It's the lack of aftercare afterwards that is going to kill them. Now, the advantage with planting in the autumn is, first of all, that you're not going to come across that dry spell, because during the winter the soil is going to be quite moist. Secondly, most of the trees will have lost their leaves, so they're not going to lose so much water. Even the evergreens are going to benefit from the lower temperatures. That means they won't lose a lot of water too. The other thing is that the soil has been warmed by the summer sun. And also, nature gives you a bonus too, because recent research has shown that as soon as a plant loses its leaves, there's a surge of root activity. And that means that if you plant in the autumn, a plant is going to get established, rooted in before the worst of the winter, ready for a tear-away start in the spring. But there's one other great advantage. You just compare these two trees. They're both the same variety. They were both bought in the same nursery on the same day. But just look at those two. Just compare those two stems there. This one is much better. Now, the difference is that this one is field grown. It does mean that you can only plant that one in the autumn. But what a much better tree it is. Secondly, the container-grown tree is going to cost you £14, whereas the field-grown tree will only cost £8.60. So you're getting a better plant at a cheaper price. Now, when you plant it, it pays to prepare the ground well. If you just dig a hole in uncultivated soil, even if you break up the bottom, the hole is going to fill with water, particularly on heavy soil, and the tree won't like that. So I've cultivated the whole of this border, and I've worked in some of my own compost in here, and that's really nice stuff, and that's going to give the tree a really good start in life. If you haven't got compost, of course, you can use peat. I also like to just improve the soil that I've dug out as well, just to add a little bonus, and a little bit round the edges too, and I'll show you why in a second. Just like that. And then a little bit of bone meal, handful is all you need, and that'll get the roots going really well. If you're planting any tree, you must make sure, bare-rooted or container-grown, that you don't put it in too deeply. Those roots there want to be just below soil level. So get your spade, stick it across the hole like that, and that's absolutely perfect. Don't get them in too deep. Having done that, you can just work a little bit of soil in from the sides. I like to do it this way because then you know you're getting the best of the topsoil. Right, when you've done that, just grab the tree and shake it up and down a bit. And that'll work soil in between the roots, so you've got no air spaces. You can then start refilling. A little firm halfway through. Don't absolutely pound it down, particularly if you're on heavy soil. And then you can completely refill the hole. Now, you'll notice that I put the stake in the hole first, before planting. That obviously avoids damage to the roots. And notice too that it's a very short stake. The reason for that is that research has shown that if the tree is allowed to wave around in the breeze, then the stem will actually thicken up at the bottom and the root system will be better. So just use a stake that comes about 1/3 of the way up, and also use a proper plastic tree tie. Never wire, never nylon string, because if you do, it'll cut into the bark and secure the tree. So get it on like that. You'll notice that there's a little collar here which stops it actually rubbing against the stake. And then when you've done that, in windy weather, that tie will slip down the stake. So just hold it on with a little tack like that. That's all it needs, and that'll grow away really well. Now, if you're planting a container-grown tree, almost the same, but just a few differences. First of all, of course, always take the pot off. It's not going to grow out of that. Secondly, there's no need to shake it up and down because the compost is already round the roots, of course. And thirdly, and this is really very important, you don't want to stick the stake straight through the root ball like that. That is absolutely wrong. It's going to damage the root ball. So plant your tree first, then put your stake in at an angle and tie it to that. And with this lovely warm soil and moist weather, these trees are going to get away to a really good start.
You definitely have to change the way you care about houseplants between the summer and winter, especially with light, because not only are the days shorter, but the quality of light is not so good as well, which means that the growth the plants make is going to be of less good quality. And windowsills are a potential hazard area because when you draw the curtains at night and it's frosty outside, obviously it's making a very cold pocket for the plants that are in there, especially if it's drafty as well. So my advice would be not to grow any tropical plants at all on the windowsill, and choose plants which can tolerate fairly low temperatures anyway. If you can remember, bring them inside when it's very frosty outside so that they're not there at all during the night. But if you can't remember, stick to this type of plant. And the lower the temperatures, the less water you want to give them. That's why it's quite a good idea to grow succulents on the windowsill. They like good light anyway, and you can let them get this dry between waterings, and they'll last a lot better under those conditions. Another hazard area in the room really is hot, dry air. Now I wouldn't put these foliage houseplants this close to a radiator if it was on, and either not use it or move them further away into the room. But they are going to suffer if the air is dry. And one way of getting around it is to group them together because they'll all benefit each other. They'll all give off moisture. Moisture will rise from the pots, and that creates a sort of environment around them which has a softening effect. Now if you haven't got the space to do that, you can put several plants together in a planter. And you might think I'm getting myself into trouble because I've used something with no drainage hole. But if you put plenty of drainage matter in the bottom, pebbles or expanded clay like this on the surface, then that makes a reservoir for the water to sink down into. And providing you don't put pints and pints on, you'll find that the water won't sit in the soil too much. And all these plants, especially ferns with their delicate fronds which hate dry air, will benefit by being grown together in that way. Now another method is to use a gravel tray where the plants aren't actually sitting in water, but the water is under them and around them and evaporating constantly around the plant. Now this got a rather hard deal last year and suffered from hot, dry air, and you can see how the tips have got really brown and dry. And also dry conditions encourage red spider mite. On the same leaf I think we can see all the speckling damage that was made last year. I managed to get rid of the mites, but if you can keep the air humid around the plant, it definitely discourages them, and the whole plant will be much healthier. Now not only do you want to try and keep the watering a little bit lower in winter, but you don't want to feed too much either, because the more nitrogen you give the plants, the more growth they'll try and make, and if they're not getting the light, that growth will be poor. But they do want to make some growth. You can see these new leaves coming along on this aspidistra. So a little bit of food is a good idea. If you think they do need feeding, use slow release fertiliser. Now these come either in sticks or granules or pellets, and you can just push them down into the compost and find the right spot, and they will gradually release nutrients as the plant wants it over a period of 2 months or more during the winter. Then you don't have to worry about it anymore.
This year on Gardener's World, looking really good. This is variegated ground elder, and it's been on the market a little while, but I think it's beginning to show itself in its true colours. It's got into this lamb's ears, this stachys, and I think we must get it out. And it's going to be a matter of disentangling the roots of the ground elder from the roots of the lamb's ears. And then, while we're at it, we'll divide the plant. Well, there we are. There's some nice little divisions at the side of the plant. And I'm going to take a clump of these away with me and find somewhere else to put them. This is one of my favourite plants. This is a small tree or large shrub. It's a dogwood. It's called Cornus controversa variegata. It's a very beautiful plant, but it's very expensive as well. Well, as it's such a precious thing, I thought it'd be quite a nice idea to make the most of it, and that's why I thought that the stachys with its grey foliage would look really nice against the variegated foliage of the tree. That's just the sort of division you want. Nice roots and a good firm crown. Now these want to be planted about 2'6" apart because they will make quite solid, substantial carpets in time. And although planting these little divisions doesn't give a great deal of effect just now, wait a year or two and the results are going to be very nice indeed. Now with a plant like the cornus, in a windy garden like this, and the wind comes this way, it's worth spending a few bob on protecting them, especially from the icy winds during the winter. And I've brought this netting along. Now, a roll of this, which is agricultural windbreak netting, will set you back a few quid, but you can use it year after year after year. And it does break the wind, especially those frost-laden winds, which damage plants so severely. And for the sake of doing this, it's just worth the extra time and trouble of knocking a few staples in and doing the job properly.
Here's a noble vegetable for you. This is a cardoon, much revered by the Victorians, and a real delicacy. It's the blanched hearts that you eat. So at this time of the year, you take these tough outside leaves and tie them up to keep that heart nice and soft and tender, and they'll be ready in about 5 or 6 weeks' time. The plants themselves are not hardy, so they need protecting from frost. So what I do is cut the bottom off an old potato sack, slip it over the plant, stuff it full of straw, and that keeps it fine and free from frost. Well, I've been getting on already with my winter digging. As soon as you've got a bit of space spare, then get on with it. Don't forget to work your manure not only in the bottom of the trench, but through all the levels too, and I put a little bit on the top as well. I'm going to grow some early potatoes here, but the trouble with my very heavy soil is that it's very hard to work in the spring. So it occurred to me, why not cut the trenches now, when it's nice and easy to work, and then it'll be much easier in the spring. Well, we'll be back with you in the first week in January. One of the things that we'll be doing, of course, is our definitive slug trial. We're determined to win. So if you have grown a slug-infested cabbage like this, you need us, so don't miss it.